Hey everyone, Cameron Joyce from Get-SysadminBlog here, though you probably know me better for my day job, which is a senior pre-sales engineer at Arctic Wolf. I'm super excited right now because I'm getting all packed up to go to BlackHat 2021. Conferences are finally in person again. Hacker Summer Camp is back on, and DEF CON and BlackHat back to back, first week in August. Super excited. The big thing, though, about these conferences is that I know that I need to take an extra step, an extra precaution when it comes to how I handle my cybersecurity risk when I go into an environment like this versus a traditional environment, right? Black Hat, well, it is more of a tame conference. It's more of the professional conference. DEF CON, kind of all bets are off. And so I want to make sure that myself, my devices, everything is as secure as I can possibly make it. So I want to share with you not only some best practices and know before you go, but also what I do to ensure that whether I'm at a hacker convention or just a regular quarterly business review, that I have a safe and secured environment that kind of has all the tenets of broad visibility that Arctic Wolf recommends. So just turn off my Wi-Fi and I'm good, right? That's kind of the question that most of the salespeople on our internal call asked the other day is just, hey, I turn off my Wi-Fi, I turn off my Bluetooth, maybe airplane mode, my phone, I'm good to go, right? And well, the conventional wisdom is, yeah, just turn that off and you're good to go. The problem that you're left with is that you can't disable NFC on your phone, even when it's in airplane mode, right? You still can't disable NFC. And mobile data has its own issues with man-in-the-middles. Not only is there GSM man-in-the-middle attacks known and available, but rogue cell sites are the things that we're really concerned about, right? Whether it's somebody running a rogue cell site for malicious purposes, or maybe a government entity that's running a rogue cell site to do man-in-the-middle attack to try to do domestic surveillance. Either way, we need to be aware of rogue cell sites, and you can guarantee that there will be rogue cell sites at Black Hat or DEF CON, right? Again, whether it's an authorized or an unauthorized one, the guarantee is that they're going to be there. And so we want to make sure that even GSM data is something that we're securing. And the last thing that you have to remember is back to the NFC thing, is that even security, even casinos with some of the best physical security in the world still get owned. In previous years, ATMs at the casinos that are hosting the events have had card skimmers found in them. The ATMs themselves have been owned. And so, again, it's just one of those things, not only am I going to think about my cybersecurity on my devices, but I also need to think about my physical security when I'm handing over credit cards or getting cash out of an ATM to go play at the roulette tables. So what are my options? How do I be safe, right? Well, your first option is a private VPN with a tunnel all policy to a network you control. So what this is essentially saying is all the network traffic is going to the remote VPN endpoint. That remote VPN endpoint is handling all the routing, outbound, inbound to the internet, all of that, right? Now, this is a pretty good policy, and this is usually what we tell kind of our corporate travelers. Hey, whether you're at home, whether you're in an airport, a coffee shop, a hotel, whatever, you connect to the Wi-Fi. As soon as you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you connect to VPN, right? And it's a good policy, whether it's a corporate VPN, a home VPN, cloud-hosted VPS, whatever you got. It's a good policy, but the problem is, again, if I'm having my traffic intercepted through a rogue cell site or a GSM man-in-the-middle, private VPN is not going to be perfect, right? RDP or VDI to a system you trust, again, much like a VPN, gives me that remote connectivity. Works pretty well. I can leave it at home, right? I can leave it at home if I don't need it, and that's my plan. Unless I absolutely need a device, if it's an electronic that sends or receives a signal, unless I absolutely need it for the 4 days that I'm going to be in Las Vegas, it's staying home. I can live for 4 days without a lot. Just leave it at home if you don't need it. And then you can always build a sweet mobile secure network, right? And that's what we're talking about today. You can build that awesome network, protect your devices, make sure you're good to go, watch out for threats on the other networks, and have some fun. So why are VPN and VDI not the answer? And VPN and VDI still leave your local device exposed, right? You're still having to connect to a public Wi-Fi network before you can connect to that VPN. You can use a VPN over GSM, which is better, right? So it's still better. Um, but you still have to connect to a potentially untrusted network to then connect to a trusted network, and that's where leaving your device open for exploitation is a problem. Now, the VDI is an interesting way to do it. You could bring a laptop or a tablet that's completely clean, has no profile data on it, fresh install of Windows 10 or iOS, what have you, and all you have on there is your VDI client. You connect then into a trusted system. That's a pretty good way. But again, as long as you're 100% aware that as soon as that laptop or iPad or whatever it is comes home, it needs to be wiped entirely, and you still need to have some zero trust connecting to that VDI environment. So both of these are pretty good, but again, I still have to connect a device to another network. So let's talk about basic rules of engagement before we go. So regardless of what method you decide to use to keep yourself protected while you're at a convention like this, these are some basic cybersecurity rules that we can all follow wherever we are to be better cyber citizens. So the first one is all devices need all security and firmware patches applied. And this also includes my applications. So not just OS patching, but I need to make sure that my apps are all the way patched up all the way. A good way to make sure that you're totally good and secure is to use a vulnerability scanner against your own machine before you go to make sure that there's no open ports, no vulnerabilities. Everything is exactly where you expect it to be. If you're an Arctic Wolf customer, we can perform this scan for you. If you're not an Arctic Wolf customer, you can use Tenable, you can use Rapid7. If you don't have licenses for either of those things, you can use OpenVAS, which is an open source vulnerability scanner that will look for things. But again, the big thing, make sure that not only are your OS patches and your hardware firmwares and your iOS and all that all up to date, but also that the apps that you're running also don't have known vulnerabilities. Next thing is read the sessions for planned disclosures. If you're using software or hardware that has a new 0-day, consider not bringing it. In the past, there have been disclosures of remote access tools, of MDM, of VPN servers, where people were using these things because these were enterprise standard products, using these things at the convention. A new 0-day gets dropped, the toolkit gets dropped. We see the proof of concept, and suddenly you're sitting in the crowd hoping that nobody notices that you're connected to a VPN that the presenter is talking about how to hack, right? So just read for the plan to read the sessions, and if someone's got something that they're going to be disclosing there, definitely consider either uninstalling that software, not bringing that device, or closing off the ports, whatever it is you need to do to make sure that that's not going to be an issue for you until there's either a security patch or there's some posted mitigation steps. Smartwatches and other wearables aren't recommended. Yes, if you could put your device in an airplane mode, that's better. But I won't be bringing my Garmin. I won't be bringing my Whoop. I won't be, any other type of wearables, whatever. I won't be bringing. I'm gonna wear just a traditional watch, and and I'm gonna use my phone to time my runs. I'm not going to be bringing wearables. Again, IoT is becoming more and more the ingress point for a lot of breaches. And so again, having a wearable where, we can't really put an endpoint detection on a wearable. So we just would rather not bring them entirely. If you have a medical device where you can disable that wireless connectivity, whether that's NFC or Bluetooth or what have you, that'd be great. But again, I understand that not all medical devices can have that disabled. So just be cognizant of that. And then bring a Faraday bag. So Faraday bags are pretty cheap on Amazon, and it allows you basically to just stuff your phone, your car keys, your wallet, basically anything that's going to emit a signal. Throw it in that bag, roll it up, throw that in your backpack or your briefcase. And now when you're walking around on the show floor, now you have some confidence that even if you forgot to put your phone in airplane mode, or somebody's walking around with an NFC scanner trying to pick up credit cards, or trying to clone car keys, anything like that, right? That you throw all that in that bag and you're good to go. So these are just some basics of anytime we're going into a hostile or an untrusted environment, some things that we can do just to keep ourselves a little bit safer. So let's talk about how we build this sweet mobile network, right? So how do we take this, which is my home lab, this is roughly 18U worth of gear, and turn it into that, which is my mobile lab that I bring with me to do my network security anywhere I am. That is roughly the size of, a good sized book versus, 18U worth of enterprise network equipment. So definitely not bringing the left with me on a plane. And how do we condense everything down into that? Well, the first thing that we have to do is we have to define our minimum requirements. And the first requirement is it's got to be able to fly. It's got to be able to get through TSA. It's got to be able to fly with you in the cabin. And then kind of as a caveat, it also needs to be able to fly underneath in case your bag is that bag that has to be pulled off and put underneath because, it's too big. So that means no lithium batteries, right? So it's got to be able to fly. Now, I personally have TSA pre-check, so everything stays in my bag. I'm all good. There's no problems. But if I was, in the general boarding line, I don't want to be pulling out 60 different devices, right? I just want to pull out my laptop, my tablet, and then, my small network stack and have it be nice and easy. So it's got to be small, it's got to be compact, and it's got to be able to fly. That's the first big one. The second one is that it must contain an edge firewall, a network IDS IPS, a syslog, and hopefully a SIM, some sort of secure wireless, secure DNS, and wireless intrusion detection. Edge firewall, pretty self-explanatory. Network IDS IPS, pretty self-explanatory. Syslog as a base, SIM, if we can do it. Secure wireless, again, kind of self-explanatory. Secure DNS, I want to make sure that I'm not having any kind of DNS poisoning or DNS man in the middle. I want to know that my external DNS is going exactly where I want. And then, of course, a wireless intrusion detection. Wireless intrusion detection is really helpful to find out if there are any, anyone is trying to breach your Wi-Fi. They're trying to capture that handshake. They're doing DAuth, anything like that. Looks for rogue AP detection. And then also the WIDES package that I use also has a Bluetooth presence monitoring. So it's kind of a poor man's physical presence monitoring, but what it allows me to do is it allows me to look for new Bluetooth devices that show up as discoverable. And what that allows me to do is kind of figure out when like a hotel maid is in my room, maybe when they shouldn't be, right? If I put the do not disturb sign on the door and then suddenly I have a new device, that tells me pretty well that, hey, someone was in my room when maybe they weren't supposed to be. So again, not perfect, not foolproof. There's definitely the possibility for false positive, but it gives me a good kind of initial step. Must be wife approved. So, well, I don't have a wife. I'm not married. It is still a term that means that basically it needs to be easy to use for people who are kind of not technology oriented. It needs to work the same as if I pulled a a basic Linksys router from Best Buy, plugged it in, set it up, gave it a password. There you go, right? It needs to work just as simple as that. And it also needs to be self-contained with no external resources. We might not be able to get to the cloud. We might not be able to establish a VPN. We might not be able to do a lot of things. I need to make sure that everything I need for this network to work as intended needs to be self-contained, right? So these are kind of the minimum requirements. So now what's in the stack itself? Right? What did I actually build here? Well, this is what it looks like. So we start with the Ubiquiti USG3. We add a USW Flex Lite as the switch that sits on top of it. We've got the UAP-AC Lite. And then, of course, I've got a Raspberry Pi 4 with some packages installed on it. We've got the Unified Network Controller. We've got Syslog NG. We've got Pi-hole plus Cloudflare. And we've got Kismet, right? So if you're someone who is familiar with, you know, infrastructure and security packages, and you already know exactly what this is the stack. This is all you need to go out and install and download. And you can check out my blog and my YouTube channel for some additional links of configuring each of these individual pieces. But this is the high level stack. Now, for those of you who are still a little new to this, or you're discovering each individual piece and what you might want to do, this is how they break down. So the USG3 is a Ubiquiti edge firewall. It gives me IDS IPS. It uses the Suricata engine, which we here at Arctic Wolf really like, and I personally really like. I use it at home for my IDS IPS. But Ubiquiti uses the Suricata engine for it, so great IDS IPS. Does DPI, does app layer content filtering. So I can do some layer 7 filtering, and it supports site-to-site VPN connectivity through IPsec, which is awesome. The only problem with the USG3 is that it is a little slow with IPS enabled. So for what we're using it for, that's no issue. But if you were trying to build this at maybe your house, I would use either the Unified Dream Machine, the UDM Pro, the USG4, really any other device other than this, just because of the fact that IPS slows down download speed to the internet. Again, in a hotel where I'm lucky to get 10 megs down, having a restricted speed of roughly about 25 to 30 megs a second, really no problem. Okay, the USW Flex Mini, it's a 5-port GigE switch. It's powered by USB-C. It is really, really tiny, and it supports VLANs. I would love it if I had gotten the USW Flex 8, which supports PoE. That would have been really great. Unfortunately, those are sold out everywhere. Those are sold out everywhere. The USW 8-60s are sold out everywhere. So unfortunately, really not much that we can do to get a PoE switch right now that fits into the Ubiquiti stack. And part of the reason that I want this to fit into the Ubiquiti stack is, again, when I'm doing network visualization, NetFlow monitoring, all those things, I want to be able to control that through the Unify controller, instead of having multiple sources and places where I'm having to change and monitor things. I could have gone with, like a Netgear PoE switch if I wanted to. It would have been small, available, what have you. But unfortunately, again, it doesn't fit within the Unify controller, and that was an important piece for me. The UAP AC Lite supports both 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz AC wireless. It's powered off PoE, one less adapter that I have to care about, right? PoE injectors are pretty easy to find. And it's got WPA3 Enterprise. WPA3 in general is, when I consider secure wireless, at this point in 2021, think that WPA3 is required because of the protected management frames. But again, WPA2 Enterprise would have been okay. I like WPA3. That's what we're using here. The Pi 2 gig that I'm using, so it's a Pi 4B, 2 gigs of RAM. 4 gig model probably would have been a little bit better. I could have gotten some more packages installed locally, which would have been nice. But again, I'm pulling out of my spare parts bin here. So all these things were things that I didn't have to go purchase. These are things that were already in my my parts bin. It's been overclocked to 2 gigahertz. Just, hey, with all the things that are going on, just having a little bit more power under the hood, definitely good. To overclock it, you need some active cooling. So I use the Argos One cooling case. The really cool thing about this case is that it has an optional SSD tray that you can see in the bottom of the image there. And so if you want to use an M.2 and NVMe SSD rather than using the SD card, more space, it's less prone to failure. A lot of really good reasons to use an NVMe drive. This is a very compact, very well-designed case that allows you to do that. The other great thing, it does have active cooling in it. So not only is it a giant heatsink, it's all single block of milled aluminum, but it's also got a 30 millimeter fan in there, and that fan is controllable via a script. So really, really cool stuff to make your Pi not only faster but stable. And then again, we're using the Unify controller. We're using Pi-hole for our DNS. Great thing about Pi-hole is that not only is that allowing us to manage our local DNS, and securely connect directly to Cloudflare with DOH, so DNS tunneling over HTTPS. But Pi-hole also does ad and content blocking for us. Anything that we can do to reduce the amount of bandwidth that we're using is obviously going to be a good thing. And so blocking those ads is always great. syslog-ng is what I'm using for syslogging. So I still need to come up with a SIM package to put on this. I'd love to use the elk stack. Unfortunately, the Pi4B being 2 gigs, the one that I have being a 2 gig, doesn't quite have enough horsepower to run the full elk stack. You really need the 4 gig model to be able to run the rest of my packages plus the elk stack. So right now we're using syslog-ng. And we're using mostly grep to do SIM, which is not great, but we're working on that. And then I'm using Kismet to do my wides. Now, Kismet's a great package, but to do wides on Kismet, you need to be able to put your Wi-Fi card into monitor mode. The Broadcom card that comes in the Raspberry Pi is unfortunately not capable of doing this out of the box. There's a third-party driver that you need to install to make that possible. It's a pretty easy install. The problem is, though, that it only supports the Raspbian 5.8 kernel, so the Raspbian Buster 5.8. I'm running Raspbian Buster 5.10, and therefore I can't use the driver. It won't compile. So, to get around that, I use a alpha external USB wireless card. The AWU S036ACH is what I'm currently using. I've used alpha for a long time with the Aircrack NG and the Kismet suites to do both monitor as well as packet injection. So when I'm doing DAuth attacks, these work great. It's got out-of-the-box driver support, which is, of course, very, very required. And then the only thing that I don't like is it uses the Realtek RTL8812AU chipset. The RTL88 series, a little bit flaky, especially under load or when they get hot. They tend to have some issues. They're not the most stable, but the drivers are in the Raspbian images. They're in the Kali images. It is guaranteed to work with pretty much all of your wireless, toolkit, and Alpha makes, good quality products. So even though the chipset is not one I'd like, I'd love like an Atheros, this works pretty well. The other thing that was really important for me, and again, why I didn't use a different Alpha that has an Atheros-based chip, is that I wanted something that's going to support both 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz wireless. I'm broadcasting SSD in both, and so I need to watch for both. This can do both, so that helps me out there. So now that you know a little bit how to protect yourself better when you go to these conferences and how you can build a secure network that's going to help protect your devices a little bit better when you're in an environment that is pretty inhospitable, we can go ahead and end it here. I'm going to be continuing this series, showing you step by step how we build each of these components. And then additionally, I'm going to show you a little bit of this in action when I get to the conference, so that you can see how this whole setup works for real. So with that, I appreciate you hanging on to the end here, and I hope you have a great day.